the Being Reasonable YouTube channel. And joined by my fellow street epistemologists, and I'm really glad to have you guys. We have a really great, interesting video to review. Oh, well, I shouldn't say that because it's my video. So it's not very. We have a video to review, and I'm really happy to do this because I really love to get feedback from my fellow street epistemologists to see what different avenues we could go down and different ways we can approach it. And what we're going to do things a little bit differently this time is that this video has been used as a training exercise by an organization. I was initially contacted by Brendan from, he's an allied health professional and researcher from Australia. He participates in a business called the Knowledge Exchange, and that runs continuing education for health professionals such as physical therapists. And what I'm excited about is that they found it useful to instruct SE principles to practitioners who have expressed assistance with communication to other colleagues in multiple disciplinary teams who may have different views. And I think that's why they selected this video with my conversation with Nick. He's a massage therapist, presumably because the conversation highlights the application of SE to scientific versus pseudoscientific beliefs that can be actually quite prevalent in basically any therapeutic setting. So, thanks to Brandon for using this video. I think that's what they're for, to help people in different situations navigate different beliefs. But before we start, it's very important that we do a shout out to Nathan's mom.
Yeah, shout out. What's up, Mom? I told my mom to watch this one.
He's going to be watching today.
Yeah, I'm going to be on my best behavior.
But please check out everybody's channels because we all do this because we think it's important to do, and we don't make a living doing this. We just do it because this is something that we feel we have a passion for.
Definitely.
Yeah. I'm personally doing it for Nathan's mom. That's my whole motive.
Yeah. Resolving conflicts, figuring out the truth, seeing if cupping therapy is good. If cupping therapy is something that works and does what this person says it does, then I would want to integrate that into my life if it's truly something that works. Though I want to see if the epistemology used to discover that it works is a reliable way to know that it works, and we'll dig into that today, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of interesting because before I even talked to this gentleman, I didn't really know what cupping. I had heard of it, but I didn't really know about it, and which I like. I like exploring beliefs I haven't heard of before too much, and so just because you go to a practitioner of something, there's a lot of assumptions made about the research or what the epistemology behind whatever it is they're doing, and it's kind of interesting to explore that, I think.
And how old it is. It's a very old practice, and it's, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's a part of acupuncture. Is that right? Or a lot of acupuncturists do cupping therapy as well, or I might be getting that confused in my mind.
They often go hand in hand. They're the same places will do both.
And I also want to thank Reed in the background because he's helping. He's not on camera, but he's helping manage the videos. So please check out his channel as well. So cool. So let's start off with we'll watch a clip from the Knowledge Exchange. They have a video where they're training, doing continuing education for other practitioners.
Alrighty, here we go. Just got it queued up.
Cool.
It would not change one bit.
Oh, okay.
I would remain 100% believe in the effectiveness of it.
Okay, so it seems like that wouldn't be a good test then of whether cupping therapy works, because regardless of the outcome of the test, you're still going to believe in cupping therapy as strongly as you did before. Is there a test that we could employ that would show us whether cupping therapy works?
And this is where he breaks it down.
So I think heaps of good examples there, real meaty stuff, and we could be breaking that down for the next hour, but we don't have the time for it, unfortunately. But totally worth watching out and engaging with this to sort of learn more. And then you can consider exploring the claim with some thought experiments. So there's different thought experiments we can use here as well. So things like, if all books on, this certain belief, etc., burn to the ground and cease to exist, how might we go about establishing if this is a real thing? So getting them to think about how do we, create experiments, essentially, that can be falsifiable. And you could hear how Mark was able to have that conversation and try and get him to think in a way that allowed him to see that the way he was coming to his belief wasn't overly reliable. How do you think society would change if we lost access to these ideas? So, bringing up that belief and just seeing, what changes if we were to get rid of this. And there's a whole bunch of other thought experiments which are great, but I'm also very mindful of time right now, and we've just got the last few slides to go through as well. So I know if you do need to run off, please
So we could
run off.
There you go, and you'll probably be able to catch the rest of it. We'll make sure that video is in the description here.
So what I really like, I really like to see other people how they describe SE, and how when they use it as a teaching tool, and just other people's approach. And I really like Brendan's video. I thought they did an excellent job, really. And I like the idea of introducing this kind of thought experiment, the Desert Island thought experiment, about how we would go about recreating some knowledge that we think we have now, and if it would be difficult to recreate that knowledge if we were on a desert island after many years, why would that be? So yeah,
I like that one too. I think that's an interesting framing.
And we can use that for a lot of, any belief, really. I've heard it used, the desert island thought experiment. I've heard it used for any religious beliefs, and you name it.
Nathan, we can't hear you.
There we go. Is that called the Library of Alexandria thought experiment? Or maybe it's called the Desert Island. But essentially, yeah, we're just asking whether or not this person or any person has thought of how the first person who figured it out. So, like, how was it first discovered? What was the history behind discovering something new? And
would it bubble up? I call it Ricky's Rewind, because I remember I saw Ricky Gervais talk about it on Stephen Colbert. Saying if all the religious books went away, and all the science books went away, which one would bubble up? We would rediscover all the laws of physics because they're objectively true.
Unfortunate phrasing of bubble up here, given the cupping technique. But I also like the Ricky Rewind. That's going to stick with my head. I know it.
Cool. Well, let's get into it from the beginning.
Yeah, let's get into it. Cool.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard any of the podcasts.
I have.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
So this is a podcast where we discuss beliefs, but it's kind of different because we don't discuss necessarily the belief itself. I want to know more so why you believe what you believe and how it is that you have come to believe what you believe.
All right.
So I'm really looking forward to talking to you. And I remember looking at your website, but it's been a while because I think it took us a while to get scheduled up for you to come here. But I do appreciate you being here.
Sure. Thank you for the invite. That was really out of the blue. It's like,
Yeah.
I like new things. I'm like, who is this Mark Solomon guy? And
well, yeah, I'm sure you're not the first person to say that.
but then I started to click on the link within your email.
Yeah.
And that's it. I started listening to some of the episodes. Like, that's interesting. So,
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Well, again, thank you so much. Get a little ahead, maybe. Yeah.
This is really cool. Like, not only have you got informed consent about the conversation, but he's actually gone to your channel and listened to past examples, right?
Yeah, I think most people do that at this point. And sometimes they don't. It surprises me when they don't, because I always tell them about it and link them to it. But yeah, usually they, which I find interesting, because usually people know what to expect, but sometimes when I ask questions, it's I get the sense that they get how the questions apply to someone else's beliefs, but then when you get into their beliefs, I think they get surprised when it applies to could apply to their own beliefs.
Yeah.
I think the
Yeah,
best
so-
way to listen to your channel is to listen to many examples, or any channel, any SE channel. Listen to many examples, since they're very often very similar questions across the board, depending, like, and they don't really change all that much depending on the belief. Like, what would change your mind? What would shift your confidence? How important is the truth to you? Those sorts of questions. And it makes it a lot easier to apply it to ourselves when we have many examples.
It does. However, I find what's interesting, usually, like when you do SE, when you practice it, when you do it yourself, you kind of learn to apply it to your own beliefs, and you make that more of a habit. But still, if you practice SE and you are the interviewee, you find, oh, I've never thought about it that way. You still have these euphoриas, even though you think, I should be better at this. I should have thought about this.
Yeah.
Knowing
Good
the
point,
method,
Janosch.
right?
Critical thinking is hard.
And Mark, I like the way you really explicitly say, "Hey, this is less about the actual belief, but we are, because that immediately says, oh, well, this method can be applied to anything. It doesn't have to be just about cupping. If somebody arrives at this video because even if they're not that interested in cupping, then immediately you saying, oh, we're going to drill down to the epistemology here. That should be interesting to any viewer.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, sorry.
Hey, Will.
Oh no, I was going to be nice to you. I just wanted to say, I think there is a lot going on in that first few moments that I think goes really easy. It's easy not to notice, and one of those things is just how relaxed you are. You're leaning back. You're smiling. He on the other hand is a little bit more nervous. Completely understandable. He's in front of a microphone in some guy's back garden. This is
Camera jitters.
This is not a normal. Yeah, there's a sense of maybe surreality to this, but you are so relaxed and calm and just friendly and amiable, and that is just one of those things that's too easily missed, and really I think adds to the efficacy of these conversations, because you're in a real sense you're mirroring what you would like him, how you would like him to feel. And I think that's just, honestly, this is just a masterclass of that in this whole video. Yeah, it's really good.
Let's play. So much for coming. It's a nice day. Hopefully you don't have any fear of chickens.
No fear of chicken.
Because I don't think they're around right now. I think they're hiding, which is good. You happen to have a strong belief about something you wish?
Yeah, I strongly believe that cupping therapy works. And I'm very happy that you asked me to come on so then we can discuss why I believe in this so passionately, where there are medical professional who say that's just pseudoscience.
Okay.
So it'd be, I think, be informative for your listeners too, because not many people know what cupping is. Anywho.
Okay, great. Well, that sounds, and I don't think we've ever talked about this on the podcast, so that's excellent.
Yeah.
What is cupping therapy?
So cupping therapy is an ancient modality to help humans get muscle tension relief. It have a positive effect on certain internal issues that we have, not just for muscular tension relief.
Okay. So cupping therapy helps your muscles.
Right.
And what, I would imagine there's people who are listening who haven't heard of cupping therapy before. What exactly happens in cupping therapy?
So cupping therapy is a practice where the practitioner utilize a cup that can be made out of several materials. In ancient time, people used animal horns, bamboo cups, and as human evolved, we created cups out of ceramic, glass, and now most popular is silicone and polycarbonate, hard plastic cups. So
Mark,
the practitioner would deliver.
Yeah.
This is really interesting to me because about 30 years ago, I was a Rotary exchange student in Thailand, and I was in a Thai boxing camp. So I used to go there every day. And I saw this happen. They were using this traditional modality to heal muscular pain. And I remember the first time I saw it, I thought, this is weird. Like, look at all these lumps, and they're putting fire on inside the glass, and I had no idea what it was.
Yeah, I sort of want to hear about the Thai boxing camp, but yeah, go ahead. Right.
Yeah, well, I wasn't allowed to do any Thai boxing, obviously. I would have got smashed. But I remember they went to a school. I'm going to digress, but they went to a school, and all these these teenagers who were picking kids to go up and, you know, for fights on a show, they come up to me and they go, "Oh, we want to fight him. We want to fight him." And one of them come up and he squeezed my legs. And after he squeezed my legs, he says, "Yes, I definitely want to fight him." And that really destroyed my self-esteem. So, so anyway, but this is interesting for me because that's the first time I saw the cupping therapy.
Well, let's jump ahead a little bit because past the description. Oh, go ahead, please.
I would recommend not, because there's like the one mistake I would suggest that I think you might have made here is immediately after this moment. I think everybody knows it.
All right, let's
Mark wanted to move ahead.
Here, let me play.
A vacuum suction on the targeted muscle or the area that you want to work on, or you want to target a certain illness or condition that you're having internally, and then you place the cup strategically on the body and pull the vacuum on it and let the magic happen.
And what is that magic? So there's a vacuum. What happens?
Right. So that magic, I said, is when your muscle tissues are being pulled up by this negative pressure by the cups. So how is that beneficial to us human is when we are pulling a vacuum on our tissues, you're giving your body spacing in between those tissues under the skin, which you cannot see. But there is an MRI imaging on Google that you can find by Dr. DePrato to show you what is happening underneath that we cannot see with our naked eyes. So with spacing in our tissues, we are actively calling for our blood flow system to bring fresh oxygenated blood to flow into that area to replenish, restore, and help heal that area with fresh nutrients.
So there's a vacuum and a cup, and you push the cup up, and so it puts a space between the skin and your
no, the cups stay direct contact with your skin, and there's a mechanical pump now where you relieve, what you call evacuate the air inside of the cylinder shape, which is the cup, and it pulls your vacuum. If you ever have a vacuum cleaner hose over your skin, that's what it would feel like, but in a constant vacuum state.
Yeah, and I truly don't know anything about cupping therapy, so what is it that by a suction, pulling up your skin, how does that heal you? How does that help?
It helps because, again, you're pulling fresh, oxygenated blood flow to come directly to that area now that you have created all that space. So now your tissue is primed to absorb the nutrient that come in from that fresh blood flow. For example, if you are an athlete or everyday people who go to the gym, you have a workout session for 45 minutes. You work on your quad, your glute, your hamstrings, your calf. Now, a lot of experts will tell you trying to replenish, feed your body within the 60 minutes post-workout. Why is that? It is because now within those 60 minutes after your workout, your muscle, your system is primed. They're primed to accept and absorb the nutrient that you're feeding it. So same thing with cupping. Now when the cup is on with a constant vacuum on your tissues are in a prime state to absorb the nutrients to help it repair whatever the injury or ache that you have in that spot.
I gotta say,
on a scale from 1 to 7.
I gotta say that this explanation sounds very, very scientific, very reasonable,
plausible, perhaps
testable, maybe.
Yeah.
the reason why I forgot how long that bit was, which I apologize. I think it certainly is good to hear his position, and he sets it out very well. He explains what it is, and so it's possibly worth hearing. I did think there was a point where I think he just sort of finished explaining what it was, and I think partly the way you framed the question for a moment it made it feel like you hadn't quite listened to what he'd said, and so he kind of had to repeat pretty much what he'd just said in the previous sentence. And I don't think that was intentional on your part. I think it was just you were looking to draw out more information from him. But there might have been just that brief moment there where he thought maybe you weren't understanding him or listening attentively enough.
Well, I probably wasn't understanding for sure.
Yeah, I think Mark was trying to show that he was actually listening. He was, okay, you put the cup, then you draw it in, but
right.
Yeah.
Immediately, the first thing that comes to my mind is low pressure. Like, I'm getting ahead of myself, like way ahead of myself in the interview, though. Like, I'm thinking immediately of ways to test the general principle of vacuums being effective in general overall. Like, if I work out and I'm high on Mount Everest and there's low pressure on my body, is that better for me? Does my body, if I'm briefly exposed to the vacuum of space, is that better after a workout?
Or an actual vacuum cleaner hose?
Or if I just take a vacuum hose and stick it to my muscles, will it help that muscle?
Yeah, I think it sounded. Sorry, go ahead.
To me, it sounded more like if you have an injury, then you need blood flow for an injury to heal, and so this is just encouraging more blood flow.
Blood flow.
So that's
I mean, it sounds that would be something
So one of the common ways of practicing this gentleman doesn't describe it, so it may well be not a part of the practice that he participates in, but quite commonly they will actually pierce the skin around the area where they then apply the suction to actually let blood. It's a form of bloodletting.
At that point, it's actually bloodletting.
It is literally bloodletting.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so there's quite it can be quite horrific looking. Actually, the picture you found was a pleasant one, but there are some quite shocking images of this practice. This whole conversation now becomes about how do we test the efficacy of this position, and how can we find out if it's falsifiable?
Bear in mind, for the audience at home, like, bloodletting was a practice for hundreds of years, simply because we didn't challenge it with testing. There was no way for us to test it really necessarily for like hundreds of years. I mean, I'm sure there were ways, but we just didn't apply the tests.
Back in the day where we thought our bodies were made of 4 things.
And there was like bad blood in us, and it kind of made sense. If you're sick, get the bad blood out.
The humor.
Too much
drink
blood,
more fluids.
Too much blood was.
All right, let's get back to the video here.
One more small thing. Small. In the beginning, he explained 2 things. Basically, it helps your muscles, but it can also heal internal organs in some way. And he ignored that. You repeat it back, so it helps your muscles, and you ignored the internal organs.
Oh,
good point.
Right.
I wondered if you did that because there was clearly a direct relationship with the pot on the muscle, and so I wondered if you sort of dismissed the more vague part of it, which is that it also then would help whatever ails you.
I might have, because a more testable claim in my mind, and that shouldn't be what directs me. It should be, I kind of
put it down to charitable interpretation, I thought.
Yeah.
All right, let's get back to it.
7.
1 to 7.
How confident are you that cupping works as a therapy?
I would go at 7. Maximum amount of belief in my own personal and professional opinion that cupping therapy works.
On a scale from 1 to 7, how important is it for you to believe in things that are true?
I would say at 7, right? We human beings, we always say, give me the truth. As harsh or as terrible as you want to know the truth, right? And then you can respond to that truth.
How do you know it is true?
In regard to
cupping therapy,
I know it's true based on my own personal experience and the experience of my paying customers.
Is personal experience a reliable way to know whether something is true?
Is this an argument from commercial viability?
Yes.
Is that what this was?
How so?
How so? Because after a heavy workout, or strenuous activities, I cannot raise my arm into frontal raise or lateral raise. After I put cups strategically on my deltoids, my pectoral muscles, after a 10 to 15 minute treatment, I am able to do my frontal raise and lateral raise. And that is perfect example of proof that cupping therapy worked for me on personal experience.
What if there's a person named Tommy?
There's so originally there's like a couple of subclaims in here on how cupping therapy works. Cupping therapy works to relieve muscular pain, any muscular injuries, but then there was one about organs, internal organs. So sometimes maybe it might be helpful, I'm thinking, to focus very narrowly on a specific aspect of that and explore the epistemology of that. Which one are we talking about? Because it might be conflating things here.
And I'm in a mistake here. I said, in my mind, is personal experience a way to know whether something is true? And what I really should have said is personal experience a reliable way to know something, to know this belief is true. And I said that more of a general sense, your particular belief, and that would have been probably made more sense.
Interesting. So you'd make it less abstract and more specific?
Well, I think with different beliefs, and tell me what you think, I think personal experience is probably a better, more reliable way in some beliefs and a less reliable way in other beliefs, maybe. But I wanted to know in this particular belief, not just in beliefs in general. I'm thinking.
Yeah. Actually, I think I would have gone the other way. I think I would have asked, are there any examples where personal experience is not a good not a good way to find that something is true? And then if it is in your case, do you believe it is in this case? How do we tell the difference? Like what is it reliable?
That's a good point sometimes to have a meta conversation around, well, when is personal experience a reliable way to know what's true? And then what makes that reliable in that situation? And do we have the same criteria or background evidence that applies here with this one?
Right. If the claim is vanilla ice cream is my favorite ice cream, personal experience is pretty good.
Yeah. We have a lot of background experience. Right? It stood up to falsifiability. Well, even if you say, the desk, the calendar on my desk is blue, that sort of experience where you're just describing, the sensory experience, that stood up to falsification a million times over throughout your life. So there's a lot of background evidence that that's reliable. You've got other people reporting that it's the same for them. So you could then compare that background evidence to this particular generalization that's being made. And do we have a similar weight of evidence to make personal experience reliable in this case?
It's probably far too early in the conversation to be talking about placebos. And also the conversation partner did not bring up placebos, which makes it kind of like weird to bring up, though that is the biggest obstacle when determining if something, or especially a medicine, is effective or not in the way that we think it is. And so I might even ask if this person believes in placebos, what they think a placebo is, and then after I figure out what a placebo is in their mind, I want to know how they know it's not a placebo. That might be a little too early in the conversation to be bringing that up, though that would be generally the direction I would want to take it at some point.
One of the things that happened there as well is, and it's something he goes back to a couple of times, is there was the comment about that his customers are sort of evidence for him, that he has people that believe that it's working. And there's also an appeal to tradition. This has been going on for a long time. Lots of people are finding it useful. And I wondered if maybe it might have been a little, I don't know. I was thinking about whether it would have been a better thread to follow than the one you did. And I can't tell, but it might have been an interesting thread to say, are there things that people believe are true that you do not believe? Are there medicines or medical practices that people think are effective that you do not agree with? That might have been really good to then use as an outsider test for the future examples of things like placebo, etc.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
but people pay for it because you really pointed that out. People pay for it.
People do pay for it. Michael Phelps got a bunch of gold medals before he like with a bunch of suction marks on his body.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Argumentum ad
comes to see
capitalism.
you and his muscles are hurting, and he wants to know whether cupping therapy works, and he's paying you for it to happen, and you're putting the cups on him, and afterwards he feels better. Is it possible that he feels better for a reason that's different from cupping therapy? Or are we certain that it would be from cupping therapy?
Excellent question, Mark. Now, I know, for example, Tom would feel better. However, at my practice at Fluffy Tiger Massage, I
love
preach
that name
to all of my clients and my students that I teach. Having your client feel better is one thing. We must elevate the standard of our treatment by showing them that they got better. So we humans always say, seeing is believing, right?
That banner asks for alternative hypothesis. Boom, right there. That's the key. That's really what we're trying to do at this point, is figure out if they can generate some alternative hypothesis that might give an explanation for the experience they're having.
And importantly, you didn't inject one. Like that's the key mistake a lot of people will do. They will feel that they need to give a demonstration of what an alternative could be.
Even I just did it like 10 minutes ago when I brought up placebo. Like the way you did it was way, way better.
It was perfect, Mark. It was really good.
Wonderful.
This guy's got so much energy. I'm taking a liking to him. I feel like if I was to go to the US, I really want to go and say hello to this guy.
Yeah.
And if someone was to say to me, "Hey, do you know a good place for cupping therapy?" I go, "Hey, go see this guy."
Fluffy Tiger.
Fluffy
Tiger, baby.
I like him. I like him.
Well, he definitely, he's got the sales pitch, the sales mentality, and not only he's got clients, but he's also got students. He's teaching other people this technique. So he is, he's got to be all in, because he's also trying to convince other people that this stuff works.
He's got a lot of dogs in the fight.
Yeah, if you haven't already, last thing before we get play, there's a Skeptic's Guide to the Universe podcast. This is just me talking. One of my favorite podcasts, Skeptic's Guide to the Universe. Highly recommend it. And I think it was the most recent episode, and the last one in January is very much about this sort of topic. All right, so let's go ahead and play it.
How do you see that you got better? So what I do is, when Tom comes in, if he said, "Nick, my neck hurt, I can't turn left, I can't turn right, I can't look up or down because my neck is stiff, I slept funny last night. My wife threw me in the doghouse or whatnot." So what I do is, I would have Tom move a certain way that bothers him, and I take pictures.
Right.
To see how
far
much
he could go
of a range of motion he has. And then after the session, he'll tell me he'll feel better. I say, "Tom, hold on. Let me take some picture, the same poses that we took pre-session." And then I show him right then and there, "Look, before I laid my hand and cups on you, when you turn left, that's all you got. But look at you now, your chin touching your shoulder." So that's how we know that it's effective, not just by, "Oh, I feel better."
Right. So there's a test that you employ to know whether cupping therapy has worked for your clients, and doing the neck test is one test. So for example, let's say you had Tommy, and then you had Todd, and then you had Jim, and then you had several people come to see you. Let's say they just, as a thought experiment, they came with the same problem with their neck, and you did a pre and post testing. And let's say that with all those people who came on a given day, let's say 6 people came on a given day, and then you did the post test, and it turned out, for whatever reason, that they couldn't move their head any further than they could beforehand. If that happened, would you have less confidence that cupping therapy works at that point?
That is a beautiful way to ask that question, Mark. So Based on my 15 years.
Basically,
You know,
all you're
he-
doing
he
there
would-
is just checking to see if your reason is really your reason.
Yeah.
And if the opposite of your reason were to happen, does that have an effect on your confidence? If the answer is no, that makes us wonder how that reason's really a reason.
Yeah, and well done.
Yeah. Well done.
you're on mute, Mark. Can't hear you, Mark.
Mark, you're on mute.
Yeah.
You try now?
He's
Say something now.
speechless.
Oh, I hear you, but it's very faint.
No, the microphone's gone.
Oh,
Okay, something. Okay.
Watch it.
Oh,
There
there you go.
Now we got you. Yeah.
There we
All
go.
right.
Not so much.
So it's really interesting with the. Oh man,
That's okay. We got you now.
you got me now.
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
Okay,
You're
I
back.
think your video and your audio is
Okay.
out of sync. That's all.
here we go. You can hear me.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. So it's really interesting that you can have someone give you their primary reason why they believe the belief, and like Nathan said, you can generate the opposite reason. I mean, like an opposite circumstance, and you could, if they still have the reason, which often is the case, then you really haven't discovered the reason.
And I think what you got him to at least establish a test, but you're now asking him, what does a failed test look like?
Yeah.
And he's having a harder time because now he's going to say, well, you just have him for a couple more sessions. Yeah, because I was thinking about this. I thought, how can we get past this little stumbling block? And I wasn't sure, would he be willing to entertain the thought experiment? What if your mother had an ailment and she went to some sort of a therapy? Nathan's mother's got an ailment.
My mom hopefully will watch this.
And instead of cupping, we send her to something else. How many visits are you willing to pay for?
Right.
We could count. If we use that kind of a line of questioning to perhaps make him think about what a failed test really looks like.
And for that, it would be really helpful to have an example of a kind of therapy that he believes is not effective.
Is not, yeah.
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 We're about to get more into testing here in a second, so let's get into that because there's going to be so much more to say.
Of experience, I haven't had a client who said after the session that it didn't improve.
Sure.
Therefore,
but if that happened,
If
let's just say
there
that happened
was-
over like 8 times, 10 times, would you have less confidence in cupping therapy at that point, or would you feel as strong as you do about it now?
right. So even if I have a client who say, "Oh, that didn't work for me, XYZ," my confidence and passion in cupping therapy would not change one bit.
Oh, okay.
I would remain 100% believe in the effectiveness of it.
Okay, so it seems like that wouldn't be a good test then of whether cupping therapy works, because regardless of the outcome of the test, you're still going to believe in cupping therapy as strongly as you did before. Is there a test that we could employ that would show us whether cupping therapy works?
Right. That's a good question too. Now, in the professional scientific world, there's so many researchers who are smarter than I at big institution universities have tried to address that same question to show the public and the medical profession that, hey man, look, cupping therapy works. However, many years of research and studies with certain kind of data and key metric numbers, there's no metric that will ever, in my opinion, will show that, hey, this is how we're going to test cupping therapy to show everyone that it works.
There's no way to test whether it works?
There's no way to test, and I'm here to tell you, Mark, it is because in the medical world, what they have is RCT, randomized controlled trial or testing.
Yeah.
That is the gold standard
Right.
to test
Sure.
and to see if a certain medication, drug technique
Yeah.
works.
Yeah.
There's no way to randomize control tests cupping therapy.
So
right?
this isn't
It's either
true,
one group receive cupping.
It also it points to something that's interesting here, because I think when he's talking about one of the things that might have been worth sort of bifurcating here would be like that in one instance he's saying cupping works. Now, it may be that the act of pursuing cupping therapy or going through cupping therapy can be demonstrated to be effective. The key question is it working in the way that he believes it's working, right? As in, the placebo effect is real.
This is why placebo is it's just so slippery. It trips everything up.
And so the problem with him is not the problem with him, sorry, that's highly uncharitable. The problem with the way this conversation has been going in this moment is that up until now we've been talking about how do we know if cupping therapy works? Well, he might genuinely be seeing effective results from this process.
Right.
Yes.
And so the question isn't does it work? The question is it working in the way that you think it is? As in, is what you believe is happening to fix these medical problems actually occurring?
And a lot of people might be asking, like, if there's results, then what difference does it make? And that's an interesting question to be asking somebody who's asking the questions, right?
Right. Yeah, definitely.
Like, I want to get better, and that's my bottom line. So, and now I've got more range of motion, right? And so that's my bottom line, and I do feel better. So, what difference does it make if it works or not in the way that I think it does? And I think
that's a good point.
What I'm wanting to know is there some other alternative way I can either get a placebo without getting hickeys all over my body, or like is there some better way I can get the same effect or the same result, and also maybe do something that is passable by some test, some alternative method to this method. I mean, if this method is an alternative method, is there an alternative to this one?
Right. It seems to be walling off any further inquiry by appealing to these other experts, to these other authorities. Oh, it's not at all testable. So
yeah, and I don't believe that that's true either. In the nature of his example, I think what he's trying to do is test whether cupping therapy works as an alternative therapy compared to some other undefined therapy. Whereas actually what we should be doing is trying to compare it against placebo. So in the example he's about to give, I think it's worth noticing that you could be testing, the test group is important here. His claim is that if people believe that that cupping therapy works and they know what cupping therapy is and they undertake it, then they're going to get better. If you were clearly the answer to this next piece is you need to test it with people that don't know what cupping therapy is. At the beginning, lay the cups on, don't vacuum fill them.
Actually, I think
go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I think this just shows how valuable it is to ask for an example of a therapy that he believes is not effective. What does it mean that a therapy is not effective? Because can you ever have a therapy where the placebo effect it doesn't exist at all?
100%. Yeah.
And of course, you can say if you feel better afterwards, it obviously worked. But usually, when you say effective in medicine, you mean beyond the placebo effect.
Yes,
right. Control.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Beyond the placebo effect, outside of the margin of error. Yeah. Here we go.
Right.
There's no way to have a placebo group. It's either you got cupped or you didn't get cupped. So
there's no way you think to put a cup on somebody and not have the active vacuum that people. I'm just trying to think of a test of what we could do.
So if you have a cup sitting on your quad, with no negative pressure or vacuum, so that cup is not doing anything. In theory, that's kind of like a placebo. However, there's no measurement out of that, right? If you have no pressure on the muscle, you can't measure a certain key metric. So say if you have a vacuum pull on your quad, they have a way to measure how much torque, how much pressure, and what it's doing for your muscle.
And it's also not a true test because you would know which group you're in, whether you're in the control group or the regular group, because you would feel the suction on your skin.
So that part is important, but I really think like locking in on this idea that without doing the therapy, you can't test the therapy. Like that, his assertion there is that unless you're literally doing cupping and measuring the torque and the key metrics, you can't know whether it's working on it. Like it I think that was a real non sequitur on his part, and I think the point you made about the you would know if you got the placebo or not, obviously is only applicable to a group that knew what cupping was when they went in.
Right.
And that would have been a
But they knew
perfect
nothing about
placebo
it.
trial. Yeah.
Yeah. No, because that would be a cool thing to test. Go ahead, Bob.
I was just wondering, is he kind of? It seems to me that he's using placebo and control group as being synonymous, and I'm not sure that they really are here. I think it's getting a little confused.
And
I don't know if it's worth being pedantic and trying to define those things at this point or not.
Tell us the difference
to work out
of what the difference between a placebo control and a control.
Yeah, like so, the people that, I take his point because it's tough to think about what a group would be. There would be a control group with cupping.
Warm sponges that have paint in them. And you put it on, it leaves a mark, and it's warm, but it doesn't suck. I don't know. It's a tough one.
Yeah.
I think you could just compare cupping by someone who doesn't know what he's doing and someone who actually learned with professional cupping.
Like maybe somebody who doesn't know like the acupressure points to place the bowls, and
why are you putting these cups on
randomly? Yeah.
Right. Might be difficult to get beyond human subjects trials, but right.
I think people going in not knowing what it is, but also not knowing that it's supposed to be a medical therapy, like maybe under the illusion that it's for something entirely different. I think that would go a long way to identifying whether there was actually noticeable medical benefit to it in some way.
Well, we tell them as I was saying, human trials, we tell them the incorrect reason. We would tell them the reason why we're putting these cups on you for something. This will help you
to promote hair growth.
Read. This will help you read faster.
Help you read in the dark better. Yeah, that's
exactly. Help you read. Right.
Yeah, I'm thinking this would be a really hard thing to test because you'd need to have a group of people with exactly the same injury that would take normally exactly the same amount of time to heal. Exactly. And then I'd be really curious to work out what his understanding of placebo is. Is placebo just suppressing pain? I'm not sure what the science is on it, but my understanding is that placebo will suppress the pain. This placebo effect is about suppressing pain, so we think that it's gone away, but it doesn't actually heal faster. It doesn't cure cancer. It just suppresses these side effects, the pain. Or in his mind, does he think placebo is actually the brain-body connection actually healing? So that'd be interesting. And then how would you test that? You'd have to have two people with exactly the same injury, one of them not knowing what cupping is, one of them knowing what it is. Very hard thing to test.
Research on placebo has demonstrated things like spontaneous remission of skin irritations through the placebo effect. It is quite a remarkable phenomenon, and actually because of its strange efficacy in a large number of areas, it becomes a real concern when trying to test whether a drug is actually having an effect or not, which is why these double-blind trials are so critical. The inflammation reduction and skin irritation and skin conditions can go into remission through placebo-based trials, or through issuing a placebo. It can be quite profound, some of these things.
Right.
Really,
and we could talk science all day long until we're blue in the face. We can talk science all day long. Ultimately, what we're doing is SE, and we're trying to figure out if our conversation partner can come up with hypotheticals that would be alternative hypotheses to their belief, and we want to ask questions that probe critical thinking. And so at this point, I'm wondering if even the word placebo has even come up, or if we've even discussed placebos yet. And it's like kind of iffy if we even should as SE practitioners, because we're wanting to use their language rather than our language. Though this might be the part at which I just bring it up and ask them if they have a concept of it. But in any case,
let's continue.
Let's continue.
Today, 2021, there's still no method to clearly state or prove that, hey, cupping works. Although there are many studies out there that you can pull up about how cupping therapy help with migraines, fibromyalgia. They have different key metrics to measure how it's helped someone who have migraines or fibromyalgia or muscle aches. But the medical world won't, and the public won't accept it because it's pseudoscience. There's no randomized control to show that, hey, Mark, look, it's real because we have the data, we have the science, right? With the pandemic going on last year, everyone wants to have the science and the data, right? So that make me think about when you have Professor Koenig from Duke, right? He's the professor and the co-founder of the program at Duke. How do you believe that God's real? There are no scientific evidence, right, to show that God exists.
Well, with cupping therapy.
Sorry about that. That seems to me to be 17. Someone is justified in their beliefs until they're proven wrong. And I'm hearing him say, you can't prove that God isn't real, so the default position is to believe that there is one. And I'm justified also in this belief about cupping to use the same thought process.
I don't know about that because he did go
You
to
don't know
great
about
lengths to. No, he explained that he thinks it's his test, his personal experience. He sees the results.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, he has in his mind, he has good evidence for it.
So then why did he bring up the God?
He's saying that the experts don't believe in it. And so he seems to be familiar with the fact that there have been studies on it and the studies are inconclusive. I think that's why he's bringing it up.
Okay.
And so the studies are inconclusive, but he has his own experience. And so do thousands of other people over thousands of years.
Right. And the age of it probably is being used as a reason as well. All right.
And it seems like you've had a lot of clients who have had good benefit from it. What I would like to know is, how could we tease apart whether it is cupping therapy that's helping them or something else? Because I'm sure when someone comes to you, they're hurting and you're a nice person, obviously, and you talk to them and you're friendly, and they probably just might feel better regardless after the therapy's over because, you're a good person to talk to. How can we know whether it's cupping therapy or something else?
Now, if it's something else, Mark, I do charge extra for my shrink.
Here, I think this is an exception where we say don't direct message because you have such good rapport with him. It's fine the way you mentioned that. You said, how do we know that it's not this, this, and this? I mean, that might create defensive to someone that's on the borderline, but the rapport is really great here and he's very open to it. So I think it's fine. The counterexample direct like that is all right.
You snuck a direct message under the guise of rapport building. It was very good.
Yeah.
Service.
You're right.
No. I use that joke all the time. My client, what you just said has some truth to it, right? Especially what we had in 2020, right? When people isolate at home and then they come to a service provider who talk nicely, and I think that also have an effect. Mentally. However, muscles are muscle, right? If you come in and you say, Nick, I just work in my yard and I can't move my back now. I think I bent over all day yesterday. And now I can't stand straight up. I don't care what kind of nice things I have to say to you, Mark, and I do nothing for your back. After an hour with me at my office that you pay for, you're not going to be able to move and stand up still. You see what I'm saying? So,
well, maybe I should ask this then. If, and I'm not saying this is the case, but if cupping therapy didn't work like you thought it did, and it was something else, if it didn't have the effect you thought, how could we find that out?
Man, that is a mystery of mysterious questions, right? How do we find out? How do we find out is if I put the cup on your back, your low back, you say, I've been digging in my yard all weekend. Now I can't stand up straight. I can't turn, move. If I put the cups on you for 20 minutes, I remove the cup and have you stand up and try to do those same range of motion that you couldn't do before, and you still can't do it, then I might start to wonder. Not start to not believe. I'll start to wonder.
Right.
Like, you know what I'm saying?
Well, what would it take to show you that cupping therapy didn't work if it didn't work? What would you need to see to show you that it's not cupping therapy that's helping your clients?
Right. So there's a way to do that, and I have tried this, right? You stop the person from receiving cupping therapy that come to you periodically. Say once every 4 weeks they come for cupping to help them with migraines.
Right.
And they insist that, man, Mark, your cupping work on me. You take them off from cupping for 3 months. So they miss 3 cupping sessions.
Okay.
And if they say, hey, Mark, my migraine got worse.
Right.
Or, Nick, I feel like I miss cupping. It helped me with my pain. You took me off 3 weeks. Now I feel miserable. The migraine come on more frequent and more intense. That's how I can tell that, hey, cupping was helping this client.
So are you telling me that if someone came to you with migraines and you gave them cupping therapy and then the migraines went away, right? And let's say you saw them 6 months later and they said that they still don't have migraines, and I don't think I need to come back to see you. Are you saying that at that point you thought you would think that that cupping therapy didn't help them?
That was
no, I would think that cupping had a role.
So you're saying that cupping therapy helped them with their migraines if they didn't come back to see you, and helped them with their migraines if they did come back to see you?
Yeah. So
I don't know if he's confused.
I pushed the envelope a little bit, but yeah.
Yeah.
So you were telling me that sounded like do you seriously expect me to believe that really happened? So that I don't think he understood it this way, but the phrasing was risky.
Yeah, it was really nice because he started out, with the test. The initial test was, put a couple of the guys back, and it doesn't work. And that wouldn't make him not believe in it. So he's still in that scenario doesn't have it what a failed test looks like. And then he changed.
Yeah, he gave me the test, right?
A couple months down the road, kind of a thing. But so he proposes a new test that but again, you're kind of showing that he still doesn't have a vision of what a failed test looks like, which I thought was really nice. But it is a little confusing on his end, I think.
And the problem is also that, again, we're not necessarily clearly testing something specific. We're just testing somebody going through these motions. We're not testing the actual medical science behind his reasons why they're getting better. It's not just that he thinks that they can turn up and have this session and go away and feel better. It's that he believes it's because of this mechanical cupping, the physical behavior. He thinks there's medical nutrients and blood richening.
Now we're trying to measure length, frequency, and intensity of migraines.
Right, exactly.
What do you do?
And so all we're necessarily suggesting is that this is a space where potentially the placebo effect could be happening, and he could be very right in his observations on the basis of that. Right. It's interesting that he's thought about these tests. Right. He's thought about it, but I think the problem is he's not clear about what he's testing. Yeah.
I wonder if maybe it could have helped to ask. You ask if it didn't work the way that you believe it worked. And maybe focus on the very specific idea of how he thinks it works. Like he explained, it lifts the skin up, and then there's fresh blood, oxygenated blood streaming in.
Right.
If that wasn't the reason, but there was another reason why it worked, how would we find that out and then work your way up? Like, how do we know that it's actually that we need a vacuum? how do we know that we cups? And not sure if that will work, but just an idea.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, get to the clear explanation that he's given for the belief.
I do think that you did it the right way in the moment. I probably can't say I would have done it any differently than you did, though, Mark, where you just repeated back what you heard, which was that if it came back and you got the results you wanted, then you'd attribute those results to the claim. And if they didn't come back the way that we wanted, they would nonetheless still contribute results to our claim. And that would be number 9. And we should be satisfied with a test that can only confirm our claim. And we're trying to find something that doesn't.
That might have been a good follow-up question at the end to ask him. Should we be satisfied with a test that only confirms our claim?
Right.
Yeah.
And the trouble with that is it's an outside. You can easily apply an outsider test to that. If somebody else comes here and they say this is only a placebo, and there's no way, pardon me, and there's no way it cannot be a placebo. It must be a placebo. I believe it absolutely. It's a placebo. If that person doesn't have a test that confirms their claim, are they justified in saying what they're saying? Yeah.
Good point, Evan.
So if they haven't come back for 6 months,
Yeah.
right, and they say in those 6-month period,
Yeah.
their pain didn't get worse,
Right.
So I would say, hey, what other things did you do
Yeah.
to help maintain the migraine from coming back? While I still would believe cupping worked. Cupping did something. It might have triggered something in their chemicals in their system to alter the way it flow in there.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
This is a lot of this that sounds very wooish in as much as it's assertions without any real justifications. And this is why I think getting to that why does he think it's working is important, because the truth is it really doesn't seem like he has a model for why it's effective. He talks about nutrients, he talks about blood flow, he talks about something in the body changing in some way. I think it would have been really interesting to hear
why it's effective,
why he thinks that those things are even happening.
What's happening exactly in the body that makes these changes take place. Like why does suction on my body fix my migraines? Well, might be a really good question. Yeah,
good point.
Okay,
let's say that I believe that Jell-O, you know what Jell-O is, right?
Right.
Everyone knows what Jell-O. Jell-O cures migraines. I believe it. And when I give Jell-O to people who have migraines, they, after a while, if I give them Jell-O, like maybe 3 days or 5 days in a row, they'll feel better. And sometimes they'll feel better for a long time. Sometimes they'll feel better for a short time. And sometimes it takes several Jell-O eatings to feel better. And what if I told you, just as for this thought experiment, that it's not the Jell-O? That's a false belief. But I believe it.
Mm-hmm.
And what if I told you that nobody could talk me out of that belief? No matter what you said to me, I will believe it till the day I die that Jell-O helps with migraines. What do you think about my belief?
I think it's wonderful, Mark. If you are someone who suffer from migraine pains, and when you believe, hey man, when I eat the Jell-O, my pain goes away, why not believe it? Keep eating the Jell-O, whatever make you feel better, right? Now,
so he's talking about the bottom line again, and you did a wonderful job applying an outsider test for number 9. If I also believed that I should be satisfied with my test that can only confirm my claim about Jell-O, what would you think about my epistemology? This is essentially what you asked him, I think. And I was very not so surprised to hear his answer, which is, what difference does it make? I'm feeling better. And that's really what I'm here to do. I'm here to feel better. And this is why it might be, it might be important to drag in this word placebo in the conversation to see if there's a concept, if that's being factored into the equation. Yeah.
Actually, sorry, go ahead.
No, go.
I was going to say, I believe that this once more confirms that it's helpful to have an example of what he believes is not effective.
You keep bringing that up. That's such a good point.
And in this example, you could have asked, like, you could have used that example, and that person really believes, or I really believe, or Timmy really believes in that therapy, but you don't believe that it works. And they say they have no way of testing it or being convinced that it doesn't work. So,
and another point on that, that sort of links off of that, is the idea that could there be problems associated with believing something is effective for that is not actually effective for the reasons that you believe it to be? As in, could that lead you to then recommend alternative medical practices or believe things about the nature and the workings of the human body that actually prevent us from finding better cures and better solutions for ailments?
What he's
and
basically
to be honest, why are we paying for people to do this then, if that's not the active ingredient too? There's the kind of ethical consideration as well,
right?
And I also hear him saying, if you have this experience with Jello, that's great for you. That sounds to me a little bit like I don't want to stop you from believing things that you want to believe. You have the right to believe it. It's kind of like what people who believe in a specific God often say, you do you, but it's not about what is actually true. You don't believe that it's true.
Yeah, Reed, you got that banner up, right? Put that banner up again. Yeah. All sincere persons' beliefs have equal claims to respect. The simple egalitarian decision-making principle.
Yeah, we hear that a
which
lot.
Is yeah. Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit? Or?
Well, yeah, there's just a few different principles for distinguishing between, opinion and knowledge. And there's the simple egalitarian principle is one. And you have like the fundamentalist principle, which is more of the religious principle of like, God, he's the grounding of truth. He knows what's right. Follow the fundamentalist, the fundamental thing, the thing that grounds all truth and knowledge. Follow that thing and you'll get to the truth. And there's just different versions of the egalitarian one. There's a more radical one there.
Special consideration, yeah.
And then there's all of that plus first make sure whatever we're believing doesn't cause any harm, any of the combinations of those four. And then there's this principle, which is I try to go with the checking of each by each through public criticism. That's science. That's the process of checking our claims against each other and appealing to external evidence. That's the way to go.
I like that you spelled that.
This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way. All right, let's keep on burning through.
Yeah.
Nick, Jennifer, Mark, Mike might not believe that. Might think, oh man, Mark's what's in his Jello?
So eating Jello may make me feel better or make someone else feel better, but it might not be necessarily true.
Mm-hmm. So even if it's not 100% true, right? Now we're veering off a little bit, right? Sometimes a false true, if it's helpful, why not believe that it is true?
Wow. Oh,
right.
So it's okay.
Whoa. So sometimes falsehoods are true if you believe that they're true. Is that what he said?
It's okay to believe it if it has benefit.
Or helpful.
At this point, I'm wondering if he's thinking about, this is where the optic of his business is on here. Like as we said earlier, his company provides the service for paying customers. He clearly has students where he teaches this. There's a circle that needs to be squared at great cost for this gentleman, I think. And I might have that kicking in.
I might have just then tried to really interpret him with exceptional charity. And that might be a good time to say, oh, is that are you describing a placebo? Like when something isn't working, but you believe it is, then it still has an impact on your results? Is that what you're talking about? And that might be a way to bring that into the discussion.
I would not do that.
You would not do that?
I would not
I'm stepping on landmines today.
Unless they bring it up. But I mean,
yeah, it's a tough.
Could have
one.
been why in it?
Could have been.
Well, I believe that it has the potential of damaging the rapport to a degree. It has the danger of him not really, probably not, but not being familiar with the concept. Not him specifically, but anyone. And yeah.
I don't know, man. I like to take risks.
Yeah,
sometimes
I get that. I get that because you want to keep it focused on his belief forming process and his belief. And if we take it on a tangent when we put these other propositions into play, and now he's changing out of what might have been something else that he had there to share, but we've changed his attention over to this topic now. Maybe this would have been a good point to have a meta discussion around, explore what he meant by the words that he said, so that he can explain for himself what he means by that, and then explore how he knows that that's true.
Yeah,
that concept itself.
I think, but this is also a great place to explore the consequences of believing things that are not true just because they seem to be useful in this moment. And I think that would be great to address.
Because if that's his belief, then it's a should, it's an ought, not an is, and then we make the ought into an is by looking at the consequences, right? Exactly. How did you decide that? Yeah.
All right, let's keep going.
To believe in a false truth if it's helpful.
I agree. Just like when
is cupping true in a universal objective sense?
Nice.
Or is it a false truth possibly that helps you feel better?
That's a simple yet complex question mark, right?
I love it.
To me and many other providers, researchers, people who have PhDs, not post-hole diggers, real PhDs from Stanford, Notre Dame University, the professionals among myself believe cupping is true, although we can't prove it scientifically, but it's true. The reason we believe it's true is because we can see results. Now, these people have results from labs, all right? I see results from real life experience. I do it for a living. I teach it for a living, right? And if it was a pseudo-true, pseudoscience, it would not have lasted over 5,000 years.
Does believing
didn't answer the question at all?
No.
So many directions.
Man. If it's a real true, then yeah, it is true, right? But if it's not true, yet helpful, I always believe that we should believe it because it's helpful. Now, if you believe it, but it's harmful, and it's not true, then that's a bad truth to believe in. Bad false truth to believe in.
So I have chickens running around my yard.
Before we get into that, I just want to ask, do you think there would have been value in reiterating the question that he did not answer? Because I thought it was just a pitch perfect question. It got to the heart of it. I would have thought it. I was really hoping you were going to repeat the question politely. I was really hoping, and I wondered if what you thought whether that would have been unkind to do.
What, or is it a false truth? Is that the question?
I think the question. Well, Mark, sorry.
I'm trying to remember the question. It was. Yeah, right. He got off to a tangent, and I'm just trying to remember what I asked him. So
you're essentially asking him if it was a placebo. Is it a false truth?
Yeah.
Is it?
Does it work because there's medicine inside of it, or does it work because people just believe it to be true? Like you really hit that exact point, right? And he started talking about loads of people use it, and it's been used for a long time, and that's not addressed. Why? Because and that kind of evasion, which is an uncharitable way of framing what he did there, but that the way he didn't address that made me wonder whether he was actually aware of the fact that it may be this thing, and didn't feel comfortable articulating that.
And like you said before, it's interesting to discuss these beliefs, especially when you're getting close to someone's other psychological reasons or monetary reasons why the belief is carried through. Yeah, good point.
Okay.
I don't know how many chickens there are. There are either an even or odd number of chickens. I don't know what the answer is. I presume you don't know what the answer is, but there is an answer.
Right.
Does what I believe or what you believe have any effect on what that answer is?
It shouldn't, because the number of your chicken in your yard should be
Number one.
a firm number once we take count.
Whether somebody believes that cupping therapy is something that works or cupping therapy that is something that doesn't work, should that have an effect on whether cupping therapy works? And it might.
Number three.
I'm just trying to think it through.
It's a complex, it's a simple thing. Does it work or does it not work, right? When you put it that way, it's simple, yet it's very complex.
If I choose to believe
that's the wrong question, because again,
work,
it might work.
Well, right. I wasn't clear, and I was saying it might because the placebo.
Exactly.
It could. And
just not for the reasons he thinks it works.
For the reasons.
Yeah.
It's easy to pass ourselves in this conversation, very easy, because we're talking about the bottom line versus the pathway to the bottom line, and whether or not our beliefs are attributing correctly what's happening. Yeah.
And more importantly, Mark, how do you not know how many chickens you have in your garden?
Yeah. Sometimes will it work on me?
It may. Now that's a great question.
Oh,
Great question,
did we
Mark.
lose the feed?
I'm gonna jump in there. I was thinking of the question, like, is it possible for there to be a therapy to be around for thousands of years and lots of people using it, and for it to be not?
Appreciate you coming. So this, I don't know if yeah. And we don't have to go through this whole video too, because it's
a long one.
Yeah,
but it's so good though. It's so good.
Great.
The first treatment may not have an.
Oh, sweet. So this is where we went to. Let's see. I think we skipped ahead a little bit. Is this at the testing now?
I'm not sure. I think this is where we left off.
Yeah,
okay.
I think so.
I'll go back a little bit more.
Cool.
Chance. Give me 3 sessions where it's kind of like an experiment, right? The first treatment may not have an effect on you. The second and third treatment may start to change that flow in your system internally, and then you start to feel. Once you start to feel the change, your system might function differently, and your body can feel and move. The way you move is different, and then you start to say, hey, man.
Well, how would we know if it wasn't a placebo, in the sense that I want it to work and it's like taking a sugar pill and me believing that it works, versus that there is something about the actual cupping, the suction, the vacuum that's doing something for my muscle?
I think that's the first time placebo's used.
Seeing the result and feeling the result is what I call seeing is believing, and that's your result.
It could be because of the vacuum. It could be because of the suction. It could be because of the placebo. We don't know, you're saying.
This was also the first time he suggested it wouldn't work immediately as well. Like there is a tendency for medical conditions to get better over time. And like if you're dealing with like a pulled muscle or a torn ligament or something, or you're recovering from some unpleasant, even severe conditions over enough time will get better. So if he's saying, hey, the first therapy session might not work, but then you come back in a week or 2 weeks and we do it again, you're going to start to feel better, right? And
and it's interesting how it's the more internal these conditions are, it seems like headaches and muscle pulls, those seem to get better with some sorts of therapies as opposed to when someone breaks a limb or something more sort of physically tangible sometimes.
Right. Exactly that. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if he could claim that it was able to mend a broken bone at an increased rate, for example. That could be observed, right?
Right.
Keep going.
Critical mind, right? I can't change your mind just by telling you that, hey, it's worked wonderful, it's X, Y, and Z. I can't place a placebo in you. You have to receive the cupping on you.
Yeah.
To say, hey, it didn't work, or hey, it did work. Now I have a change of mind, a change of heart, because I can move. My pain is less.
But could it work because I just want it to work?
In my personal opinion and professionally, it wouldn't work that way.
How could we find that out?
We find that out because if you already have a skeptical thought that, hey, this guy's full of it, this cupping thing is full of it,
okay,
but I'm gonna try,
right,
just to see,
right.
So
I see. So if you have a skeptical mind and you go to do cupping therapy, you don't believe it, and it works, then cupping therapy works.
Exactly, right? So this is someone coming in.
But what if I go with a skeptical mind and it doesn't work? Then cupping therapy doesn't work.
It doesn't work for that particular person.
So then it still works.
It still works in my mind.
How could we find out it doesn't work if it doesn't work?
If it doesn't work,
does this count as an anecdotal fallacy, even if it like is working on yourself? It's like, yeah, because this is a medical procedure. I would feel more comfortable if there was a more sample size here going on.
Or I think, I mean, go ahead.
Is there a way, maybe ask him at this point, is there a way that you could do the cupping therapy that doesn't create a vacuum, but you don't tell the clients, but it feels the same, and test that for a month? That might be an interesting test.
Yeah, it's really interesting. We all have these SC conversations where, it's getting, look, I mean, this conversation is going for a while. Things are getting a little circular because I'll go through this line of reasoning and I end up to the same place. Like, okay, so how will we show that if it doesn't work? And then we kind of go down a slightly different avenue and kind of end up at a different place. And I have problems with this. I do like, oh, we're here again. You know what I mean? And like, we've just we're going around a wheel, and that's sometimes I find it hard to break that cycle when I'm seeing I'm in it.
Yeah,
it's tough. Outsider tests are really the best way to break that wheel, but you also don't want to overuse them.
I think he's immune to outsider tests though, right? Because his belief is that if it works, it works. So, if somebody else claims that they can do the same thing, he'd just be, well, yeah, great. Then it's true for them, this is why, again, it would be great to hear if there was any claim that he did not believe, right? Because then we would have that potential for an outsider test. But right now, his belief is the Jello is effective, right? That good for you. The Jello works for you. That's great.
I'd ask if there was a skeptical person and it didn't work on them, what was it that made it not work on them?
Great question. Yeah,
that's right.
When you find a higher number of people where it doesn't work that are skeptical than among people who believe in it, and what does that say about the method?
Great question. Yeah. Oops. All right.
The person that's receiving the therapy would say, hey, it didn't work, even though it's the first session, and then they say, oh, it didn't work, I don't want to try ever again, wasting my money. And we should understand that, right? That's their position. However, same thing, going back to your previous podcast with Professor Koenig, how do we know that God exists? There are billion of people who believe in God, Jesus Christ, or Allah, or whoever God they worship. How do we know?
How do we?
Right. There are no scientific evidence to prove that, hey, man, God is real. God is right there.
Should we believe in things that we don't know?
We should. Because, Mark, we live in a world with a lot of bad things, right?
Yeah.
People are taking their own life because they have no hope.
Sure.
No hope because they ain't got no faith, right? Because they don't believe.
What, and to you, what does faith mean?
Faith meaning believe in something that is good for you and the world, even though you cannot prove on paper or data that say, hey man, this exists, this works, right? But faith is what you feel.
This is what's happening. He's doing good for the world. He's helping people. He's making them feel better. This gives him a sense of purpose. I think this is the core part of what the belief is about.
Certainly, yeah.
But now he's really getting worked up. He's
I have a lot of friends that will get worked up over that principle.
Right.
And I love them very much. But I also wonder what they're thinking when they do that. Yeah.
When this happens, though, when the I was going to say, when the energy escalates in a position like this, it makes me question whether or not, if this card falls, other cards may fall, and that this person may feel emotionally vulnerable. Right? Like
we're doing SE, and you hear, and someone it gets amped up at a certain point. That's a good clue that you're getting to another reason. Yeah.
Well, there are lots of potential, psychological framings that are maybe holding this person's well-being together, or at least they believe are, and there's genuine potentially fear in having these positions invalidated. Hence perhaps the escalation of emotionality.
But it also shows you that it should be a sign to you, and sometimes I miss these signs where you probably shouldn't, push quite as hard at this point because, you're being told something, and by body language or emotionality, maybe, but not by words.
Yeah, right. I find this is the perfect point to switch to what we have in common. So switch straight to moral intuitions and go along the lines of. Is what ultimately drives this that we want to avoid harm. That's what we really value, and I value that the same as you. And it's a question of let's explore what are the best strategies to avoid harm, and how do we have reliable ways to know if those strategies are true. So we bring it back to like we're the same. We share the same values ultimately.
Right.
And I was wondering, Mark, you said that you noticed that you were ending up in the same place over and over again. You went another cycle, and again, you ended up in the same point. Maybe that was also what he was noticing, and maybe that frustrated him and got him worked up a little bit. Yeah,
that's a good point. Yeah. So faith is believing in something without evidence for that thing being true?
Right, because something in life you just cannot prove.
Should we believe in things that we don't have evidence for being true?
Again, if it is helpful, why not believe?
Well, in the beginning of the show, I asked you how important is it for you to believe in things that are true on a scale from 1 to 7. You said 7.
Yes.
Do you want to change your mind?
No, I'm adamantly firm on 7.
Well,
Even though
I'm a little confused because you really want to believe in things that are true at a 7, but you're telling me that with cupping therapy and other things, we don't know that it's true.
That was a push.
Most people do not know that it's true. I know there's some truth to it. That's why I said I'm adamant on the 7. Now,
but you're also telling me that if it wasn't true, you wouldn't be able to know that it wasn't true. So how do we know things are true if there's no way to know if they're not true?
Yeah, so you go by people experiences. Say like if I never been to, I don't know, Honduras. And these people of Honduras telling me, Nick, there is a Godzilla in that river.
Okay.
How the heck you and I, Mark, would tourists to Honduras, you and I wouldn't know there's Godzilla in that river. But we're going to have to take the Honduran people word that, hey, man, they live here all their life. This is their village. They know that river more than I know.
Well, if there's Godzilla living in the river and we want to know whether that's a true thing, if Godzilla exists, I would imagine, and tell me if I'm correct, that there's a test. There's a way we could find out whether Godzilla exists.
Yes, Mark. You and
This
I
guy's
would go
awesome.
in that river, wouldn't we?
And if Godzilla or somebody, or if Godzilla went in the river, and then there's a test, or we could drain the river, or who knows what, and we could find out whether Godzilla is in the river or not.
We'll find a way.
We'll find out. So we could probably get close, maybe not perfect, to whether there's a truth there.
Mm-hmm.
Does cupping therapy work the same way?
In a sense, yeah. And again, there are many researchers, scientists, PhD people from really big university. These people are real smart. Over years and years, they have been trying.
I thought they were post-hole diggers.
To come up with ways to test this thing in the lab.
But I think you're telling me that there's not a randomized control trial way we could do that.
Because that is the only way the medical world would accept the results.
He keeps making these attempts that appeals to authority, but then the actual authorities then end up saying that they can't prove it. It's such a strange move.
Yeah.
I love his energy though.
But if cupping therapy,
if I was there, I'd be like, "I'm sold, Nick. I'm sold."
Yeah, much work. If suctioning your skin, putting a vacuum on your skin, helps my muscles, and it's true, I really would like to know it. And if it's not true, I don't want to believe it.
Right.
So that's why I'm asking you how you know what you know, because if it's a true belief, I'd like to believe it. Yeah. And if it's not a true belief, I'd rather believe something else.
Right. Mark, when we do a follow-up podcast, I can bring my cups. I put it right on you. And then you can tell me and your audience and say, hey, man, this...
It doesn't seem like that's a test, because if it doesn't work, you're telling me cupping therapy still works. And if it does work, you're telling me cupping therapy works.
So just pointing out here, at the moment, the cadence of the conversation has turned into almost argument, right? It's kind of broken down. The rhythm is gone. The relaxed nature of it is gone.
It is what I try to work on the most in these conversations, and I often don't realize it's happening until I look back at a conversation and like, why, Mark, are you so heated about
honestly
this?
I have so many interviews where I listen back to them and I realize that the energy wrapped up kept ratcheting up just like this, but like I do it worse than you, Mark. You're actually way more calm than me. And I think it happens. Well, I got some interviews I haven't published. Okay, maybe I'll send you a couple that I haven't published yet, and you can take a look at them. All right, but it happens for me. When it happens is when we keep hitting the same point over and over, and that's when I, as the practitioner, get frustrated. And when I do, I need to remember to pause myself and also breathe. And it's so hard to do that when you feel like, if only I just get this next question out, my IL will hear this question the way I'm intending for it to be heard. Right.
You're not.
So
it's your job to break that cycle. There's the pressure on you is to find a way out of that loop, but you can't break out of that loop by repeating history.
And I take it personally, if I just could ask the right question in the right way,
of course,
sometimes these things cannot be solved in a conversation. Sometimes they can't be solved in 20 conversations. You have to just accept that that's how it's going to go, and you're not going to. It's not your job to save the world. It's not your job. It's
you want to chase the rabbit.
Where we are.
The rabbit's fun. It's fun to chase the rabbit. And there's a danger with it. I think sometimes in these situations, obviously, it's definitely indicative of maybe time to stop. So that's one thing to pay attention to there. And the other thing is, of course, if stopping isn't where you want to go with it, then a change of direction. Let's talk about something else adjacent to this for a moment, and then maybe come back around to it. Probably should note that laughter is because of the enthusiasm, not the expense of the IL.
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
indeed, absolutely,
definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
I don't
know
if this.
we are criticizing this from the comfort of sitting in front of our computers,
always
watching it back and simply having all the time in the world to think about it and not being.
We're on the sidelines. It's way different when you go to a park and do it yourself and just start talking to people.
Absolutely. This SE conversation is
absolutely.
This SE conversation is awesome. I think your SE sessions are awesome, Mark. And this one I really like. Like, you hit a lot of great exploring epistemology. It was fantastic. So we're picking holes from the sidelines, and anyone can do that.
No,
after the fact.
But when I look at my videos, I sometimes they go a lot longer than they should, and I get heated, and I honestly don't realize I think my emotionality is down here, and it's like way up here. And
there are some people that I've seen get way more escalated, and it is something, you know, if you're going to do this, if you're going to do SE, this is something you need to guard against. This is not something you need to be aware of. This interlocutor is just fantastic all day. His energy, his enthusiasm. He's hilarious. He's funny. He's charismatic. He is no doubt a
really
great
good
salesperson.
I'm glad. I mean, he's a really good IL. It doesn't seem to bother him. So yes, yeah.
And he's thought about these issues. He's talking. He's thought about the science. You know, there's
one last thing that I want to mention is, maybe if you feel like, or if you notice that you might be in a situation like that, it's absolutely okay to say things like, give me a minute to think about next question. I need a moment here. I need to process it. That might be good. Turns down the pace of the conversation, gives them time to breathe, gives you time to breathe, and then maybe you can
You know, I've never done that before. I don't think I've ever done that. I want to try doing that maybe at some point. If I'm noticing that the conversation's getting wilder and wilder, I might do that.
Yeah, the pace is too fast right now.
It's like ping pong, of course, because the faster you go, the faster he goes. Then you're going to reflect in kind. The energy just escalates, and it's this harmonic sort of resonance that goes on that just drives it into disagreeable spaces.
Yes, we're not really reflecting right now. It's going too fast, right?
Yeah. So we'll go for another 10 minutes and however long we get in the video. We'll just wrap that up there.
All right. I've just got one quick thing to suggest. If when you're in circles like this, maybe this might be an exception to messaging, but in the form of a hypothetical. Like, I get curious now to know, well, I have in my own idea, right, what my quality criteria is for separating correlation with causation. And this is like, he's seeing correlation and he's assuming that it's causation. So if we're going in circles, I might suggest just to check in to see, whether he values this as criteria to separate the correlation from causation. Like, how can we control all the variables? How can we turn the hypothetical cause on and off and measure the results? And check in with him. Would you value that as criteria for working out whether correlation is causation? And helps him to reflect now on whether, epistemologically that's a good standard to have to separate the two.
Yep.
So when you believe in something so strong, right, and you can see that something is effective not only for yourself but for many other people in the public, for you and your people, it's the truth. It's just you cannot prove it in a sense through a test.
So if Johnny comes up here and Johnny says, and I know how strongly you believe in cupping therapy, that strongly, Johnny comes up here and says, I do not believe in cupping therapy. I don't think it works. I don't think it does anything. And he really, really believes it strongly. And you believe your belief just as strong. I just want to know what's true. How can I find out?
You can find out by asking, who is it, John?
Johnny, sure.
Say, Johnny, what bothers you? Right? He may have a frozen shoulder from playing baseball all his life. And if John say, hey, I'm not able to do this motion with my right throwing arm for over 10 years.
And then you give him cupping therapy.
And then I do my thing for his rotator cuff, say 10 minutes. We take the cups off right here, in on your show. And then we ask him to mimic that motion.
Right.
And then if it happened to be effective and true, Johnny would have a look on his face that say, oh my God, this thing works, right? So
that wasn't quite the right outsider test, right? Because in the example, Johnny didn't have an opposing position. Again, like you and Johnny both shared the skepticism. Like, we don't believe. How do we get to the position? So we can't compare Johnny's reasons because Johnny has no reasons. He just doesn't believe, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I think you're on mute, Mark. So.
And I've also, like, I don't want to rely on people's mere subjective telling me that it's better. Like, I'd like to have, some kind of like pressure gauge of like someone, if I have an issue with my shoulder, I can't pull this thing with a lot of pressure this way. So
right.
That's an objective measure. I don't have to rely then on people giving me a testimony. I can have that objective thing there. And then I can apply different therapies with different people who have the same condition. Go to cupping therapy, allow them to apply more pressure, or something else doing it, and just control for that.
There's quite a lot of very strange things to do with muscles where, you can put pressure on somebody's arm and then suddenly it feels lighter for a period of time. There's all kinds of weird mechanical reasons why temporarily somebody might notice there's some difference, but that difference doesn't correlate to actual medical treatment, right?
But again, I think his example is not an example of being able to falsify it. You probably get to that, but he says if it works, you'll be able, or Tommy will be able to move his arm. But if he's not able to move his arm, that doesn't mean it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Tommy's now paralyzed. I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
That's how you, Mark, as the spectator,
Right.
can find out, say, hey, cupping actually worked. It did something for Johnny.
Right.
So that how I would prove to you that, hey, this thing works.
And if it didn't work for him?
Then I say, give me a couple more shots.
And if it didn't work for him?
After 2 or 3 more sessions of the same metrics, same spot, 10-minute treatment for 2 or 3 more sessions.
Yeah.
If it didn't work, then I would say, it didn't work for Johnny. However, it did work for Joe, Mary Beth, Josephine, Jennifer of the same issue, frozen shoulder. So,
but you would still go on believing that cupping therapy works.
Yes,
Right.
because the rate of failure where it didn't work is so low.
But I think you're telling me no matter what the rate of failure is, you would still believe in cupping therapy.
Well, I wouldn't say whatever rate of failure. I say because it's very low. That throughout my 15 years career, the failure where it didn't work for the public is so low compared to the successful rate, right?
Okay, what would the failure rate need to be in order to shift your confidence from whatever to 50 or 2?
Yeah.
Definitely.
We live in an era where trust the science, trust the data is so important. If you look at the percentage of being successful and treatment that are not successful.
Well, back to my Jell-O example. Let's say Jell-O doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it, but it doesn't work. How can you help me? How can you help show me that it doesn't work?
Have many more people who have the same migraine condition as you. Say 10 other people. Have them eat the same Jell-O that you're eating.
Right. And then I could comfortably know that Jell-O doesn't work.
Exactly. So
we could do that with cupping therapy.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And
so
then if we gave cupping therapy to 10 people and it didn't work, then it doesn't work.
Then I would start to have doubts. But I'm so confident, Mark. If we have 10 people with rotator frozen shoulder problems, right? If we bring 10 in for an experiment and we did the same treatment for all 10 subjects,
I get you.
I would say 1 or 2, maximum 3 would say, that was crap, right?
So, I get where you're coming from. So what I'm really trying to get down to is we're all walking around with these intense, really strong beliefs, and we believe them so strongly. And a lot of us have these beliefs that can't be shown to be false if they're false. I'm not saying they're false, but I think a lot of us have beliefs that aren't true, and there's no way to know that they're not true. And I'm wondering if the fact that all of us have these strong beliefs and a good number of them might not be true, that could get us into trouble somehow, you know?
Right. So if it's a false belief that is not true,
Yeah.
that can get us in trouble. We got to use our common sense, right? And say, hey, man, eating 20 Jell-O a day might not be healthy for me.
But if someone said they want to use common sense to say that
Being
cupping
wrong feels a
therapy is
lot
not
like being
true,
right.
that doesn't.
Yeah.
That's 11.
I would imagine that wouldn't jive well with you.
Right. I would say, hey, if that's your belief, I respect it.
Yeah.
We go on our merry way, right?
Should we respect beliefs that are not true?
We should, right? So it based on individuals. Say you're Mark Solomon, you believe Jell-O help you with your migraine. Who the heck am I to say, oh, you crazy, right? Whatever the individual believes, as long as it's not harmful to society.
What if I respect the person, but I decide not to respect the belief if I think that there is not a healthy level of evidence to show that that belief is true?
Right. So that is a different opinion, right? It's okay, but different belief in whatever the person believes in, as long as we can express that in a two-way adult conversation, right? I'm not saying, oh, Mark, you full of shit. That's disrespectful.
Yeah.
Right? I say, Mark.
But we can have different opinions.
Exactly. We can have different beliefs.
But presumably you want to know what's true.
Right? So the truth does set you free.
Let me ask you this. If cupping therapy wasn't true, I'm not saying it's the case, but if it wasn't true,
right.
Would you want to know it?
I would want to know it, right? So I would want to know so I can respond and address all the thought and belief I have in it all these years.
If it wasn't true, how would it change your life?
Oh, it would change drastically, right?
How
Because
so?
that's what I do for a living. That's how I earn my income. That's how I support my family. That's how I pay my mortgage.
I understand. So if it wasn't true, and it seems like a lot riding on this belief.
Yeah.
The energy was so high, it was escalating, and these questions were perfect.
Yeah,
I was when he went that route, but I think it was great.
Yeah,
it makes me uncomfortable because if you're watching this, don't push this hard. Don't push this hard. It's just no. It's
well, you're trying to fill an hour for a radio show too, right? So there's like a lot going on here.
Well, yeah. Hopefully that's not my reason.
Hopefully that's not your reason,
right?
Though, like, yeah, it's so tough.
It's just when you're pushing this hard. I mean, we're not. Whatever people might be doing SEs for different goals, different reasons, but I think it'd be safe to say that at this point, whatever those goals are not being satisfied. So
right.
Yeah.
It's the extended cut of the video where you go after them with the baseball bat that I found shocking. But that was
chasing each other around the yard.
Yeah, we'll leave it here and we'll let people go to the original video and watch the rest.
But also, it's great how honest the interlocutor is. Like answering last few questions this honestly, that was great. I mean, that just shows what a great guy he is. Yeah,
he's a wonderful person, truly. And I think if I asked him to back on, and I think he'd be happy to come back on and pick up the conversation where he left off. So
I also think you were a lot calmer than you give yourself credit for. There's definitely a lot of people that are less calm. Those conversations that get circular are frustrating, and I think you did really well in the grand scheme of things. But it's a pitfall we can all fall into.
And that's the problem with these conversations.
Right.
We're trying to have these conversations better ways, and where we don't let the emotions get better. I mean, this is why we do SE, so we can have conversations and really talk about them dispassionately, and not just them devolve. So
right.
Well, thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. It's
been fun.
Really helpful.
It was a great
always
talk.
Learn so much when I do these things. I really do. Very helpful.
And you were so much better than Anthony in the last video that we.
I missed that one.
It's a little unfair, but that last one with Anthony was like 6 or 7 years ago before we refined a lot of this process.
Well, it's a growing process. I mean, I cannot listen. I can't watch. I can't listen to my like early stuff. It just.
Same.
Right.
Same.
Yeah.
Even though I've got some of mine on there, and honestly, like the reason why I like to participate in these reviews, even when they're not on my channel, I want to help inspire people to do this at home with the people that they have in their lives, with your friends and family. Everyone's got somebody in their life that's like the crazy uncle or something, you know, that's just like it's got a belief, and it's not even crazy. Maybe you just don't understand something, you know. Maybe there's just a belief that you encounter that you just don't understand. What do you do in that situation? I mean, if you're not apathetic, if you care about what they are saying and you want to involve yourself, then this is a great method of discovering someone else's thought process and actually making the relationship between you and them better to resolve your conflicts. And that's what this is all about. And that's why it's a little weird that, you know, Mark has all his camera equipment set up and he's trying to create content, right? And that sets up a very different dynamic that makes it not a normal conversation. And then on the other hand, you got the IL who is his business, right? And there's so much on the line for somebody who's making an income based on a belief. There's so much more at stake, right? And so for both parties in this talk, the stakes are super, super high. So I just want to get that clear for everybody at home that's watching. When you talk to your uncle or whatever, your family member, there's a lot less writing on the line for a lot of conversations most of the time.
But sometimes there is that much.
Sometimes there is. It's like my whole reason for meaning might be predicated on a particular belief. And so that can definitely make things more difficult. But keep practicing, keep trying, have those difficult conversations. It really will.
They're okay to have them perfectly. They really are. And you know, you have them imperfectly, and especially if it's with an uncle, you just come back later and pick it up where you left off and think about the conversation. And having a conversation in the style of SE it can seem unnatural because we're not used to having conversations where we continuously ask questions in kind of a Socratic style. And
I would say if you don't look back at it and think, you know, that I could have done that better. I think the most important thing we do in the SE space is reflect on how we could have done that better. Honestly, because there's so few people that you're doing this and thinking, you know, how could I have been more effective in being, you know, hearing my interlocutor better? How could I have communicated more effectively? How could I have asked a better question in that moment? There's no perfect example of SE in practice.
It's true. Thanks, guys. It's awesome.
Thank you, Mark.
We'll be
That's
back
wonderful.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. It's been great.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching, Mom.